So this was a request. It's called The Unreal Life of G-Dragon and Human, Kwon Ji Yong. It's 25 minutes long, which means when I react to it, it's probably going to be like 40 to 50 minutes. And I guess we'll just get into it before we run out of time. First frame, CNN travel.
CNN once picked 50 reasons why Seoul is the world's greatest city. There were more side dishes than the main dish, the Korean wave, the fast internet, and one of them was GD. Today's video is about the GD and the human Kwon Ji Yong. Born in 1988,
What the heck is this voiceover? It's like a radio.
GD was able to develop his talent with the help of his mother, who had helped him to do whatever he wanted to do since childhood. Seeing GD,
That's a good mom. A very supportive mom.
who liked to dance and was full of talent, his mother took him to various auditions. And through this, he appeared in MBC's early childhood education program Popopo
Po po po.
at the age of 5 before entering elementary school. He showed off his talent in the show, and despite his young age, GD showed excellent dance skills.
That's pretty amazing, actually. You give your kid off extremely early, and you're taking them off the beaten path, right? And you're hoping that they're going to be successful, doing something different from everyone else. And it worked out, obviously, but I mean, for the parents, it's a huge risk, and I doubt they saw any returns in this for a long time. It was basically just their kid living for like maybe like 20 years, just like hoping to eventually have all their work pay off.
Then he received the attention of Rula, a popular dance group in the 1990s. At that time, Rula was planning to bring together child dancers to make Little Rula, and GD participated in it. From then on, GD accompanied them to concerts across the country, and danced in front of countless people when he was only 7 years old. But as time went by, the popularity of
Is this him on the left?
the Rula began to wane, and unfortunately the Little Rula was disbanded. 8-year-old GD was shocked when he heard, "There's no Little Rula from tomorrow on," and he declared to his mother that he would never be a singer or dancer again.
No, no.
So, little GD, who was active on TV and on stage, started a normal life like his friends at the school. But his talent didn't let him go. One day his family took him to a ski resort, he entered a dance competition and won first place.
Guys, this reminds me of my student. She was like 7 years old when she got talent scouted. And then she worked for like 5 years. And then she basically quit for other personal reasons. And then her whole town got hit by a tsunami. But anyways, let's continue.
And coincidentally, the MC of that competition was Lee Man, the current CEO of SM Entertainment. After seeing GD's talent, Lee Man accepted him as a trainee at SM, and like that he worked as an SM trainee with BoA, SES, and Shinhwa for 5 years.
5 long years.
However, in 1990, SM Entertainment did not have a complete system unlike now, so it was not possible to give a clear vision to GD, who was only 8 years old.
I think I remember what happened to my student. She was saying that after 4 years, she was training people older than her. And that she didn't really like it. She wanted to be creative. Oh, this is confusing.
So GD only went to SM once a month to dance because there was nothing useful to do. But after some time, it happened that GD listened to Wu-Tang Clan music at his friend's house when he turned 10 years old. Shocked and impressed by the never-before-heard hip-hop performance, he discovered his love for hip-hop from there. At that time, hip-hop wasn't popular enough in Korea, so
Did I ever say that my favorite Big Bang song is Bad Boy?
there were only a few places to learn about hip-hop. But
They should do more R&B.
thanks to his diligence, he finally found an academy where he could learn freestyle rap. And coincidentally, the academy was also the practice room of the Korean hip-hop group, People Crew. The members of People Crew were amazed by the fact that only a 10-year-old boy did come into the academy to participate in rap. The members loved him a lot, so GD was able to learn rap and hip-hop from them. And after 3 years at 13, he got another great chance. At that time, several hip-hop singers gathered together to release an album called 2001 Korea.
You know what's actually missing a lot in society these days, because we all go through these we all go through a system designed by people who lived generations before, right? And so you're going through school right now and you're learning something that someone decided 10 years in the past was going to be good for you when you're 20 years after you're done school. And so there's like this 30-year time gap between what they think is right and what you're actually going to end up what's actually going to end up being good for you. And it's only really the people who live in the now who can like really like best steer into the future. So living in the now and knowing what's good right now is what's missing from our society. And what I'm basically talking about is like apprenticeships, right? Like if you were a blacksmith back in the day and you're like, I'm gonna learn to be a blacksmith from the local blacksmith, and the blacksmith is giving you advice about, hey, this is what I'm doing right now. And the kid is seeing like the writing on the wall about things coming in the future, right? Oh, this is this way, this that way, and that's what we're really missing. Like we don't see enough of those kind of like apprenticeships where like these guild things. It's just way too like one size fits all, and one size doesn't fit all.
And the only 13 years old GD featured the lead song and even released his own song called G-Dragon. Thus, a 13-year-old GD received a lot of attention as the youngest rapper in Korea, and this event influenced his future a lot. Because after this, he had a meeting with the CEO of YG Entertainment, Yang Han-suk. At that time, there were many hip-hop musicians in YG, so Yang Han-suk immediately contacted his mother as soon as he heard about GD. Later, he recalled his first impression of GD like this. There was a little boy rapping like a pro, and I was very surprised to see it. I was wondering, how can this kid who is just an elementary school student rap like that and present his facial expressions and style like that?
You know what's interesting about this is that, I mean, it's not like he was like high professional now. Like I just did an award show and I gave the award for best male rapper to like this Jong kid, right? And he was good. He's really good. He's better than I think GD was back when they showed that clip. But the thing is, back then the standards weren't that high. But like as you go through time, standards do increase, and or things just change really. But there are like leeway periods throughout history where this is the case. Like when you look at movies from the 70s, like what did they do? They didn't really have a lot of standards.
몇 살이에요?
내 나이 13, 여기는 힙합 더 발, 힙합 더 발에서 랩하는 나는 G-Dragon. 여기까지.
여기까지요?
So Yang Han-suk met GD and his mother in person for explaining their vision. However, when his mother went outside for a walk,
This kid, he looks like me when I was a kid. It's like he basically looks like me.
Yang Han-suk said to the 13-year-old GD, "You have to convince your mother that you really want this. Even if you have to cry or scream for it, because no matter what, you have to come to YG." As Yang Han-suk said, GD came home and convinced his mother that he really wanted to join YG with tears in his eyes, and so he was soon able to sign a contract with YG, in which many hip-hop groups worked. After becoming a YG trainee, he had to do every chore for a year, such as cleaning the practice room and running errands for seniors.
Wow.
So that was his schedule at that point. When he got to the studio, he had to clean before and after the practice. This took about an hour, and in between, he could practice for an hour or two before going home. Although he was responsible for all these duties alone, he did not neglect the training. And by the time he was approaching 14, he was also able to take part in a few songs of YG seniors, and therefore gained stage experience in the process.
That is a hustler. Very impressive.
One day he met his new friend at YG, and that was Taeyong. GD and Taeyong, who were the same age, naturally got closer to each other, and they dreamed of having their debut while being trainees. But it wasn't that easy going, someone may think, because both of them not only had to carry out their trainee lives but also their school lives. GD hated prejudice such as singers are empty-headed. That's why GD thought that I should try my best in school just as I work hard as a trainee, and so did Yang Han-suk. In fact, back then, Yang Han-suk wouldn't even let them train if they didn't score more than 80 points on school tests, so GD had no choice but to work hard as a student and trainee. Also, GD had to go through a lot of hard things before his debut.
I feel like this kind of value system is really important because something tells me that this was probably the case before, and then like maybe in the future they streamline things so that it wasn't going to be like a situation where they didn't meet a minimum bar of like some kind of like knowledge and intelligence. But at the same time, you can tell from like they don't really care that much in terms of not YG in particular, but like you can see a whole bunch of other companies. They're just trying to poach the next talent. They don't really care about what they know, like in terms of like their schoolwork or anything. But maybe some do. Maybe some do. But I feel like it's really just not that important anymore. I feel like maybe it's become a bit more shallow and a little bit more formulaic. And so now it's just kind of like, let's get the next generation. Let's milk them. Let's like see what trends are hot and follow them. But like, we're not really like reinventing anything right now. We're not like being the leading minds and stuff. Whereas here, they're like, you can see they rebuilt their potential. They prepared them to make the decisions for themselves, and he learned on the job of what's good, and he like gained the respect of the current generation, and then he was able to iterate it with that respect intact. Whereas I feel like maybe today a lot of like new generation people are not that respectful of old generation people, and there's like almost like a trolling level of disregard and disrespect for like things that came before, including like even like movies and music. Like you can see they don't really look back on stuff and understand why it is what it is. They just kind of like, oh, that's so old, cheesy, right? But like I look at the old stuff and I'm like, hey, I have a lot of respect for this. I like it, and even if I like talking about, hey, this would never fly today, and I can laugh at it, I can still say, hey, part of me likes it.
GD and Taeyong were also backup dancers, in case other dancers dropped out, and although they were only trainees, they didn't get much help from the agency.
That's a good thing. Not being that guided by the old generation is actually a good thing. They had it really sweet, actually. And, a perfect example of this, and I'm sorry to be distracting from the subject matter that you guys probably actually care about, but I just want to say that if you ever heard of someone named, he created the movie Citizen Kane. His name is Orson Welles, and basically he was a part of this Hollywood studio. They didn't guide him. They didn't give him projects to work on. They basically just gave him some money to like be quiet and do his own thing. And because they gave him like a budget, but they also they gave him a small budget, which wasn't enough to do what people typically did back then. But they actually gave him a lot of freedom, and so he started inventing like all these like camera movements and just new ways of doing things that were just like people didn't even say was possible back then. And so that's why we have like these like dolly shots and stuff, and like all these like different types of narratives. And to this day, it's arguably one of the best movies, according to critics, there is. Like, my favorite movie is The Shawshank Redemption, and that's actually one of the contenders for like the top 3 movies, including The Godfather Part 2. And yeah, but yeah, you can see that freedom is like a very important thing in terms of like letting people decide, like and innovate.
Example, when they went to a concert, they had to go via subway with a huge suitcase. And after
They didn't even get cars to drive them.
their stage performance, they had to go home all by themselves, mixed up with the audience who enjoyed that concert.
That's crazy. See, I think that's way too far. They should have at least given them a ride.
Because being a trainee was so hard, GD vowed to be successful no matter what.
Like, really? They couldn't, 2 kids, they couldn't give them like a taxi there and back? They couldn't spend $40? I guess I have no idea how far the concert actually is.
Meanwhile, in YG at the time, there was a system called the indifference system that allowed trainees to develop their skills on their own. Through this system, the trainees had to be assessed once a week without extra lessons in singing or choreography. So as the time passed, one trainee after another started to disappear. In this tough trainee environment, GD and Taeyong worked hard for 6 years to get their debut, and it paid off as YG gradually started talking to them about their debut.
That's crazy. They basically went through a lifelong survival show without it being filmed. So they had they couldn't appeal to their audience. Like, if you're watching a survival show now, the audience can keep people alive. But back then, they were basically in a survival show, but they had no audience backing. They just had to hope that the judges saw it. as a good thing.
However, the company's plan was very different from GD's wishes. Because GD thought they would debut as a hip-hop duo, but the company planned to make them idols.
I would have liked to seen that. A hip-hop duo.
He was very shocked that he would debut as an idol. He wanted to show his own music to people for a long time. That's why debuting as idols who wear the same clothes and make the same choreography was like a death sentence for him.
For real, for real.
He said he didn't work hard for 6 years to end up debuting as just an idol, but YG Entertainment was too powerful.
Not powerful enough.
That's how GD met the 4 new members who would later debut as Big Bang.
You think you're gonna assimilate me? You're not gonna assimilate me. I'm gonna become an idol and change your whole industry.
After 1.5 years of preparation, YG introduced the 6 idols to the world under the name Big Bang. But in reality, it wasn't an official debut but a survival program called Real Documentary Big Bang.
Oh my goodness. I think I tried to watch that and it was too long. And it wasn't subtitled or narrated enough. So I actually started to lose my voice while watching it. And I think there's still 5 parts or something I have to watch.
Even though GD went through all kinds of hardships for 6 years at YG, Yang Han-suk sent him to a survival program. At that time, Yang Han-suk put enormous pressure on GD with words like, "Kwon Ji Yong, after 6 years of training, do you really just want to go home?"
지용아 6년에서 집에 갈래?
Like this, Yang Han-suk kept putting pressure on GD until he finally made his debut. It may have been tough, but thanks to that hard training, we know GD for who he is. In fact, GD was one of the few idols who was able to write his own songs precisely, because YG regularly gave him homework for a long time.
So his skills, they weren't just natural. They were earned. That's a lot. It deserves a lot of respect. Who can become creative under pressure? It's a very rare thing, actually. I mean, you had to have it in you.
That homework was composing, and he's been doing it since the middle school. In 1 year, he had to write a song per week, then one every 3 days, and eventually, later he could write 1 song per day. Writing songs so regularly for this long time became a natural thing for GD, just like eating. This was for sure a really hard time at YG, but necessary to process until the current GD was born. In 2006, GD finished 5 years of a trainee in SM, 6 years in YG, so 11 years in total, before being able to stand as the leader of Big Bang in public. However, at that time ballad was very popular in Korea, and big idols like TVXQ and Super Junior already dominated the idol market. So, Big Bang didn't get as much attention as expected for the time being. One day, GD sent Yang Han-suk a solo song that he had been preparing for a long time, and just 5 minutes after sending it, GD received a call. "Kwon Ji Yong, I'm really sorry, but this is the perfect title song for Big Bang."
What a jerk.
Not for your solo. GD was devastated, he couldn't even cry anymore. YG Entertainment had promised him for many years that he could release a solo album, and he thought this was the perfect opportunity. But instead he was disappointed again, and wondered how many years he would have to wait for it. Nevertheless, the 20-year-old GD had no choice but to give up his solo song for the benefit of the group Big Bang. However, nobody realized at that time how much this decision would affect not only GD itself, Big Bang, but the world. The title track of Big Bang's second album, Lies, released in 2007, shook the whole Korea. Back then ballad was still mainstream in Korea, but Big Bang's song changed everything. In the karaoke bars from then on, all the students who didn't even know English sang, "I'm sorry but I love you." And Big Bang received a lot of affection with it.
What the heck?
Big Bang swept all kinds of music charts in
I think my keyboard just became undone. Oh my goodness, completely detached. Guys, I have a keyboard on it. Oh my goodness, that's a screw falling on the ground. Okay, let's get through this.
Korea, but GD didn't stop here, and just 3 months later they released Last Farewell to lead the charts again. And this brought Big Bang, the second year in a row since its debut, to the top. In this process, GD once said in an interview that he lost up to 55 kilograms because he couldn't sleep while writing new songs. With a faint smile, he said that the secret of his diet was the pain of creation, and he continued to release another song, Haru Haru, making 2008 the year of Big Bang just like 2007. However, he did not stop and made a remake from the song Sunset Glow to target more fans. The original masterpiece Sunset Glow has been remade by numerous singers, but the song created by GD was the most popular and loved by all ages. In this way, Big Bang left its name as a group that made a big mark in the K-pop scene in the late 2000s. And YG, one of the many agencies, won the title of the top 3 agencies after Big Bang. At one time, 80% of YG's total income came from Big Bang, and the Big Bang members' military enlistment was considered the biggest risk.
80%. And the military was the biggest risk. Hey, in the end, did that turn out to actually be the case? The military stuff was the end of the group.
For YG. And at the center of all this success was GD, who created 3 of the 4 hit songs. But with constant success, stress and pressure, it came as it had to come, depression set in. One of the reasons was that some Korean netizens criticized him severely, stating that most of his songs were plagiarism.
Plagiarized from who? I'd like to hear these other songs.
In addition, since his debut, he has never been able to rest properly, and the constant working process also on his solo album was a great burden to him. Even Yang Han-suk, known for being strict, admitted, "GD's depression symptoms are deeper than expected. When I saw how he was suffering, I was very sorry for everything." So GD stopped all his activities, including his solo album, for a while. Fortunately, GD, who had a month-long break, was able to regain its former brightness and prepared for his coming solo album. Since it was his long-awaited first solo album after all the hardships, he expressed all his emotions in the lyrics, and also the depression he was struggling with. Here are some of the lyrics of the song Gossip Man. In addition to writing and composing the album, he was also involved in all the other work related to it, like the choice of the color, costumes, and much more, and this album was also a great success. Even after 2007, 2008 and 2009, GD's voice still echoed in the streets of Korea. But why did some Koreans hate him so much back then?
Haters gonna hate.
Was it because people couldn't accept that a 20-year-old boy, who debuted less than 3 years ago, wrote and composed a string of national hits?
It was an assassination attempt by competing companies. They're like, back then, Korean pop was just formulaic stuff, right? Or like kind of lame. No, maybe it was like less formulaic. Maybe it was like trash formulaic, right? And then Big Bang changed everything, and then it became like good formulaic. But you know, that's usually how it is. Someone invents the smartphone and everyone else follows. Someone continues to innovate the smartphone and someone follows, and then like a few people innovate the smartphone, and then like the rest still continue to follow. Like only a few people take risks.
Or because people didn't want to accept his success? His first solo album in a decade was a huge success, but the public criticism was also heavy. Many people suspected he had plagiarized most of his hits.
Plagiarized off who? Where are these songs that he plagiarized off of? Because if they're so hot, let me hear them. I want to hear good music.
And after Heartbreaker, people were convinced he had plagiarized American hip-hop artist Flo Rida's Right Round.
Really?
Of course, after some time, even the artist Flo Rida himself stated officially that GD did not plagiarize. But until this, he had to face constant harsh criticism. Actually, 1 month after the release of Heartbreaker, there was a poll with 15,000 people, asking who do you think is the singer that is the most overrated. And GD was voted with a staggering 8,000 votes. Nevertheless, he was busy preparing for his first solo concert. Since this was the first solo concert under his name, he gave his best, and the concert was so perfect that even he himself said, "I have no regrets." But the very next day, criticism was pouring down on him over the internet.
Stop reading the internet. That's what you gotta do.
With the song Breathe, he wanted to portray himself, a GD who didn't want to wake up from a dream anymore. However, many media outlets misrepresented the performance, accusing him of portraying sexual representation.
Hey, I can kind of see it.
Of course, the media preferred the fact that the majority of fans present at the concert were teenagers, as the main reason for the harsh criticism. Although he portrayed aspects of happiness and coolness during his performance, the media only reported things that could create headlines. After reading these articles, he thought to himself, "Am I destined to be cursed no matter what I do?"
You know what? You gotta leverage your popularity over the media. The media sucks, and sometimes you gotta be like, hey, I'm not gonna do interviews with people who are just lying all the time. And you gotta turn the tide against the media.
At the same time, fiercely hateful anti-fans launched a call for signatures for GD's resignation from Big Bang.
It really was. I don't believe that. This has got to be like company espionage. I don't believe this is like sincere. Like just people on the internet just hating.
Without any reason, going so far as to even launch a campaign for him to commit suicide. Even more cruel things were demanded, which I don't want to mention here out of respect for GD. Now 22 years old GD had worked harder than anyone for his dream, yet the public found harsh criticism, some even going so far as to call for his death. All of this caused his depression to flare up again. At some point, he came to the conclusion that he couldn't do anything right, because no matter how hard he worked, he was always portrayed as a criminal in the end. At that time,
I'm convinced that in this world, we have challenges. And these challenges, they cycle and loop over and over until we find a way to deal with it, right? And so if you're someone with anger issues, maybe you're always going to be in a situation where you're going to get like intense anger at a situation until the day you kind of figure out like how to get around it, how to stop like being angry, how to stop like if you get angry, stop having outbursts, and maybe it comes with a realization or hurting someone you love, and then like eventually you overcome this thing, and then suddenly the cycle no longer repeats. Maybe it does like maybe once or twice just to make sure, but then like you kind of pass the test by not reacting to it this way, and then suddenly you never see it again. And there are many things like that in this world. I think that there are certain cycles that people repeat because they're not quite over it yet, but then like they continue to repeat it until they do get over it. And there's a lot of things like that.
gave an interview once, and it was really sad to listen to his heartbroken words. "While others sleep, I write songs, so I hardly sleep. I wonder why some people hate me so much. I'm still young, and I get hurt a lot. I'm doing my best, so I hope you guys like me at least a little bit." Despite this heartbreaking interview, the attacks didn't stop.
So this is like one of those things where you're like, mentally, you have to find a way to think around this. So like one immediate way would be to separate people who love you from people who don't like you, and then to like find out what is in someone's heart to cause them to not love someone but to hate someone. And usually if someone's a hater, then that person's just a miserable person just in themselves. It's actually like it's not even like a sensible, well-adjusted person is going to be like that. It's just never the case. It's just logically like just it's the way it is. Mentally happy people are just generally just not that negative, I guess.
In July 2011, a shocking article was published about him, accusing him of smoking weed. And here's what happened. After the concert in Japan, GD was drunk at the after party. Someone there gave him a cigarette, so he smoked it, and that was the problem. He was suspended from the charge because he was drunk at the time and admitted it was his fault. In some countries, the use of drugs is punished more severely, and GD was also an idol of teenagers and a symbol of the music industry in Korea at that time. So because of these incidents, the national criticism of him was even harsher, and the media slagged him.
It's funny because like I think in Korea you always hear about that kind of stuff, like, oh, you can't do any drugs, you can't do anything. But then like in like America, it's like you're not punk rock unless you're punk rock, and then yeah, you're gonna be drinking, smoking, doing a lot of like stuff, which I can't really talk about, I guess. But it's just a funny how it's like a difference in, it's like a difference in culture, really. And who's to say which one is right or wrong? But like, people gotta live their lives outside of their careers too, and they have to find their way on their own. And there's really no value in shaming people, because shaming doesn't genuinely change anyone's minds. It just forces them to conform for reasons other than explaining why they should. If you understand what I'm saying, like if you shame someone, they don't actually learn the lesson. They just know that they're gonna get shamed for it, and that's why they stop. But it's not really explaining logically, hey, why is this actually bad for you? Why should I understand that this is bad, or whatever? And that should be the real reason people don't do things.
Of course, the case cleared up after the circumstances were clarified, and the criticism of him also subsided. But he suffered greatly during this time. Later he said, "I didn't think that I could do music and broadcasting for much longer." A year after the incident, he returned with his new album One of a Kind, and of course the lyrics reflected his feelings. Here are some of the lyrics of the song One of a Kind. Of course, despite public criticism, he never stopped delivering the message he wanted. In 2014, there was an incident at the Mnet Asian Music Awards, MAMA. At the time, GD was invited to perform at the MAMA Awards. GD took the opportunity on stage and showed everyone the real background of the MAMA Awards, because it wasn't about talented artists but only about popularity. Thus, the MAMA Awards were lacking in their meaningfulness. At the same time, his outstanding fashion sense was discovered, and he was invited to numerous fashion shows including Chanel. Chanel even later named him Chanel's global ambassador.
I wonder I wonder what happened between, as a kid, wanting to be a hip hop artist and following a very distinct line of, what am I saying? Not line, but category of style, and then like transitioning to boy band, and then like just removing inhibitions, and then having a wider just array of fashion sense, which would be very different if you had a hip hop career, I think.
From that point on, GD was labeled as a celebrity and artist beyond a musician. But behind all of GD's fame, there was terrible loneliness that people couldn't see. Then in 2015, his lyrics reflected that loneliness. These are the lyrics of the song Loser. From then,
It's interesting seeing those lyrics, because he almost sees those restrictions, I guess, as something to look like, it's almost like a curse to him, the way he's talking about it. But I don't see it as a curse. I see it as, maybe it forced him down a different kind of path that actually ended up benefiting him in ways that he maybe doesn't, really hasn't reflected on. But I think just what I said about the hip hop stuff. Like if he went down and became a hip hop artist, I mean, what level of hip hop artist would he be? Would he just continue to follow those same trends and just continue to make just hip hop stuff, or did going down the boy band thing just completely expand his world and sound, and just like being able to do all these different genres, including underground British pop?
Then on, GD gradually began to explore the other side of his great life. After the album's release, he began to expand his career beyond music into art. At the Seoul Museum of Art, he prepared a special exhibition called Piece -1 Beyond the Stage. But this time he was criticized again, and this time it was the art world. Media started to publish the negative articles about GD. It's a huge product wrapped in art. Public art museums have been mobilized for the strategy of entertainment agencies. What's the point of being inundated with female fans in the art museum who relegate art to a supporting role? Like in Korean idiom states,
Say that whoever said that doesn't understand art. I'll tell you guys something, because this is something that's usually lost. As someone who actually did study art back in the day, I'll tell you this: art is about communication. And the reason you need art is because you can't communicate without it. So language is a form of art. Me speaking English to you guys now, this is actually a form of art, because if I was just grunting at you, I wouldn't actually be able to express things to you properly, right? And so the normal ways of communicating are inadequate, and so we have art to help communicate. That is the real meaning of art. It's not just like, oh, I'm drawing lines in a page and it looks like crap and it's just weird, or it looks really like weird and like it's just artsy. It's just like this whole medium thing that it's ambiguous. No, the point of art is always to communicate something. And so that's why you call a musician an artist, because there's poetry in there. There's coming up with the right tunes to make you feel something sad or happy or bouncy or summery, right? This is communicating ideas to you. It's a communication. If you're a composer like Beethoven, his music puts you in his mindset, right? Like if you listen to like the Moonlight Sonata, that puts you in his mindset. It gives you feelings that he has, that that music's not always playing in his head, but it conveys the feeling that he has. Just like me saying, hey, I fell in love with a girl and then we broke up. That's fine. But if I told you it in the form of a different story, like, oh, I mean, I bled myself dry for this girl, right? Then that's not a literal thing. That's a form of poetry, but it explains it in a way that feels more like impactful than if I just said just the plain basics of it. And so art is all about communication, and anyone who's saying like a guy who makes music and like, or even someone who makes a product isn't doing some kind of art, I think they just misunderstand it completely. And the thing is, the more people you can reach, the more successful the art is.
Back then, GD was criticized so much that someone could have said he was even criticized for breathing. People thought everything was fine with him because they only saw the powerful and charismatic GD on screen, but it wasn't like that at all. Because behind all the GD facade, there was still a normal human named Kwon Ji Yong. As in 2015, Big Bang's 340-day world tour began.
340 days. That's like a whole year of just touring.
GD also celebrated the 10th anniversary of his debut. But the hard times he'd been through, all the harsh criticism that haunted him no matter how hard he tried, had already turned him into a human wreck. During a concert, after finishing his part, he simply collapsed backstage. And even in this state, he kept pulling himself together and dutifully completing his role on stage, and such breakdowns were repeated several times. These breakdowns was also due to the murderous schedule of the concerts that continued without a break. But neither his tens of thousands of fans who attended the concerts, nor the members of Big Bang were aware of his situation. As the leader of the group, GD had to keep his composure and preserve the facade. At the same time, however, his depression increased. GD became 30 years old, and he prepared his second solo concert in 4 years with his second solo album. And he showed his feeling again through his song. Next is an excerpt from the song Superstar. Even in the music video, Kwon Ji Yong now ditched all the glitter and just performed as himself only with a piano.
I feel like the work that he does, it probably occupies too much of his time. Because if he didn't have time to process a lot of these kind of like, I don't know what to even call it, just like, is it trauma or is it like internal suffering? And just like to deal with feelings of like whatever he missed out on, like everyone misses out on something, and at some point you kind of gotta like either accept where you are or make a change to like get something that you really want. But sometimes, I mean, you have to understand that what you got in exchange is maybe outweighs what you lost along the way. And so I don't know if he ever had time to think about that or process it, but I feel like the work was just too overwhelming, and the company really should have just like gave him some space, and maybe even him himself should have put his foot down, because I mean, if you're like suffering to that degree, collapsing on stage, and then like the only place you get to like express yourself is through work, then I think there's a problem.
He started his world tour shortly after the album's release, but he said worrying things at his concerts in Korea. Also during this world tour, he gave a deeper feeling about himself in an interview in Japan. The following is a summary of what he said in his Korean concerts and interviews in Japan. Thanks to you, I'm having a great day. Living like this has been my dream since childhood. It feels good to live in this dream. But sometimes I'm not sure if it's a dream or reality. There are many times when I get confused between reality and dream. I had to go through everything, even the bad experiences, but I had only great experience and a good life as a musician. I think that's why I'm going crazy. I'm lonely. I'm very lonely. Life is just so lonely.
If you're lonely, and I've said this before in another video, loneliness comes from being disconnected from yourself. And I know that I think someone commented on that as well, and I don't know if they really understood what I was saying. But really, people are more than they put out there, and sometimes they're not even what is put out there. And so if people are loving some version of G-Dragon that is not G-Dragon, and he's hyper aware of it, then trust me when I say this, like, if you're not being yourself out there in the world, if you're always like putting on a mask or always like on your best behavior, at some point you will become lonely, because the person who is getting love is not you, but this facade that's in front of you. It's just like this wall. This where's my hand motion? There's this wall in front of you that's like it's getting all the love that you're not getting, because you put up this fake version of yourself or facade. And even if there's a part of you in there and you appreciate that and you get some kind of high from it, you're not really connecting with the person, because that person's not seeing the real you. That's usually why people feel lonely. It's because they're disconnected from other people and disconnected from themselves. And maybe they've never really had time to really think about who they are. Or even, sometimes it's not about even like figuring out who you are, but choosing who to be and just being happy with it as well.
I'm in the spotlight, but I feel so lonely. A few days ago, I was looking for a way to relieve stress and I wrote a letter to myself. I'll read it for you. You're doing great. Everything's gonna be fine. You'll make it. But you should take a rest too. Live for you. The world doesn't collapse just because you're not there. Look at the nature. Humans are really small beings. Don't overreact. Let's just hang in there this year. After the 4-month of his world tour, he suddenly turned on his Instagram live streaming. His fans were very surprised, because he wasn't the person who loved to do live streamings. And GD said, I came to my house in Korea after a long time after the concert, but there was no one. And I was so lonely, that's why I turned on the live streaming. And the fans who watched the live said this. At the time, GD looked really lonely and anxious. It was really sad to hear that he turned on the live stream on Instagram, because he was feeling lonely even though he was not the live streaming person.
That's another thing, is that, let's say you are a big figure. People idolize you, right? And they create a version of you that's not you. That's part of it too. Sometimes it's not your own doing, but sometimes it's just the momentum of your life. And I mean, even that happened to me. I was like big man campus, and it's like people don't really know me, right? Or like if I was a superstar at work, people didn't really know me. And so like there's just like this. At some point, you kind of like you learn to kind of see that, and then you pull back on it. And then what I defaulted to personally was that I chose to be non-reactive. And so I basically became a blank slate, and it came to a part where eventually you kind of lost the adoration, you lose the love, right, of these people who just kind of like find it easy to react to what you do because there's nothing to react to. But then, even though you're disconnected, you become more and more disconnected from people in that way, but you become more connected to yourself. And so like through that process, you're able to, really like see that all that stuff is just didn't even matter. I'm not sure if that makes sense to you guys, but it makes sense to me as I'm saying it. It makes sense that, yeah, sometimes you have to strip away the BS.
At this point, earning money was no longer the main point for him, as the annual copyright fee he is receiving was already over $1 million per year. When he turned 31, he joined the military, but things didn't go smoothly here either. During his military service, he was transferred to a military hospital for ankle treatment. But one soldier recorded everything about GD's tattoos, even his underwear size,
What?
and the so-called GD observation diary was posted online.
Lame. What kind of guy is looking at another guy's underwear size?
This incident was a massive invasion of privacy and a stalking crime, resulting in severe criticism of the soldier and military force in question.
Socially retarded person. There's so many people like that.
As a super
I'll tell you, you know how I was telling you like a long time ago. I was like this big star at work, right? One day I was just sitting there and I was working on a project. Two guys came up to my desk who I didn't know. And they started talking third person with me there. It's like, oh yeah, this Darian guy is like doing this, right? And I'm just sitting there and they're all talking about me like they both know me to each other. And so they're kind of like trading like currency with each other regarding my clout or something. And I was just like, I didn't say one word to either of them the whole time. They were just continuing this conversation with each other as if the other guy knew me, and like both of them like convinced each other that they both knew me in some ways, and then they walked away after that. And I was just like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And that was probably the first time I learned to really just stop putting myself out there as much in terms of like no more like responding to company emails, no more being like too outgoing. And I found that you actually like it actually helped a lot to not be like as out there. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I did restrict a part of myself, and so I hate that it had to come down to that. But like, yeah, it's just kind of weird. Some people are they're just like not human really sometimes. These people who come up and they're like robots about like, hey, this guy's got a cloud, I'm gonna jump on this cloud. You know, it's kind of weird, honestly.
superstar, he had to satisfy the public's wishes. But at the same time, his private life was massively invaded, making a normal life almost impossible. After his discharge from the military, he worked with Nike. But apart from his fashion business, there was no news about him for a long time. Of course, after Sung Lee was involved in burning Sungate, many people used to say that Big Bang would retire itself. Fortunately, however, GD returned in April 2022, for the first time in 4 years with their new song Still Life with Big Bang. Despite being the first album in 4 years, Still Life has racked up more than 30 million views in just 3 days since its release, showing that so many people are still waiting for it. Even as many people criticized GD, his fans who supported him always said, "Seeing GD reminds me of the saying that geniuses are short-lived. Like the stars we've lost before, it makes me feel terrified that he's going to leave us overnight. I hope he stays strong for a long time."
Well, I hope he's not that unhappy. I know that some people they get really in their own feelings about things, and it's never really as bad as sometimes they see it. Maybe they just need to talk to someone to kind of put it in perspective. But like, you know, feeling disconnected from yourself or not having like a friend that you can talk to, I think that's a really easy fixable problem. And I know for some people it's like maybe they get anxious and they can't fix that kind of a problem. But you know, hopefully they have family, hopefully they have friends, and if they don't, then they have anonymity. We live in right now. The internet's the kind of place where, yeah, you can like connect with people that you don't even know, and you can just talk to them like a normal person. And now I think that's really important sometimes, just to have a little bit of anonymity so that you can talk to people. I get a bit of that from making these videos. Like I'm here anonymous. I'm not like as anyone like big or anything, and I actually like the small little chats I have with people in these comment sections as well. Like I feel like I can talk to them like a normal person.
In an interview 9 years earlier, he spoke about his plans for retirement. He said that he was on stage because he wanted to bring good energy to the audience, and when he couldn't emit good energy anymore, he would leave without regret. So it's hard for his longtime fans to say he should come back without a guilty conscience, because they are aware of how long he's been working hard and how much he suffered. During the preparation for this video, I only was wishing for him the best and wanted to say, "I wish you could be our star again, but what's more important is that you're happy, even if it means you're not coming back to us anymore." The video ends with the sincere hope that the human Kwon Ji Yong will be happy.
I don't think it's over. I don't think he's gonna leave. I think that I think he should find himself and then come back as himself. And I think that he should trust that he won't be rejected for whatever his real self is. And that's really what it's all about, you know? Like I had a best friend for 16 years. And I used to always feel rejected by that guy all the time. Because like he'd say like some of the stuff I liked was crap, or like some of the things like I might be like find funny was not funny, and I just thought like that's kind of weird thing to say to someone if that's like your taste. And so like, you know, I get to be on here reacting to K-pop now, right? And normally I just listen to rock, and everyone's like, oh, you listen to rock, that's cool. Oh, but then I'm like, oh, you listen to like girl bands and stuff. You listen to girl groups. Like, is that okay? And for me, it's like I don't like being judged for that stuff. So I'm like, I get to putting on Avatar inadvertently reacting to that stuff, you know, like being able to like anime or stuff like that. It's fine, right? You get to feel connected to people with a little bit of anonymity. But at some point, I think G Dragon he's gonna have to find out how to be whoever he really is, or how to find whoever he really is, and then show that to the world and not feel rejected, not feel pressured to be like everything that people expect him to be, but more just to be himself, really. And I guess that's all I can say about that. This was a long video. I've been here for 50 minutes, so that's double the video length. And I'm sorry for any tangents I made that maybe distracted from it. Maybe did I talk about myself too much sometimes? I regret that if I did. Sometimes I forget about it. Anyways, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. What the heck? Oh yeah, I forgot. My keyboard broke off, so my hands aren't tracking. I have my entire keyboard tray in my lap. Normally it hangs off a swing arm. But anyways, if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. Then I'll see you in the next video.